Mr. Chris Kennedy, and I'm sure you know him and Chris Jr., and we are really excited to support them for the Democrat Party. So I would really, really appreciate that, that if we would get some words from him, and if anybody have any questions or any good things to ask questions after he's done introducing himself. I'm sure everybody knows what his agendas are for the Democratic Party this year. So we will be asking questions and taking questions after once we are done with his speech. And we are really thankful to everybody who has taken their time out on Friday night to come here and for you to come over for our event. We are really, really thankful.
Thank you. Before we begin, I just want to say a big thank you to Bushra for hosting us all here. I actually was here a few weeks ago, and I've had the best dinner I've had in all of this campaign.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. We have some more good food for you coming up. I hope you like that too.
This is my wife, Sheila.
Yes.
This is why I moved to Illinois.
Very happy.
And our son, Chris, who I think you all have met now.
Yes.
And then our daughter, Kate.
We
Kate's
would
the
love to have
oldest.
you here, Kate.
Come over, Kate.
Yeah.
And our friend, Aaron. Come over here, Aaron.
Very nice.
And then our friend,
Aaron, come
Sarah.
here next to...
Is Vicky's here, right? Is Vicky here?
Vicky's
on her way. Sarah Nixon and Bob Nixon, who came in from Washington to be
Thanks.
here tonight, and our friend Pat Morris.
Thanks, guys.
So can I tell my story about coming to Illinois? In addition to following Sheila, do you want to sit down?
Yes, we would love to sit down and you sit down.
It's an incredibly long story.
We would love to hear the story.
And I'm really grateful for
We are
your
thankful
support of
that you guys-
my family.
You guys are here, and we're thankful for all the Palestinian community too, because absolutely since I've been here, I'm an immigrant too, and it's been 18 years I've been living here. Very much active in Ramallah Convention, and very much, yes, with all the kanafa and all the food, we love it. We love all the zaatir and the bread. But on the other hand, yes, the issues remain the same, that, being minority, we would, and I'm a small business owner too, but this country, and I would have never imagined coming here as a teenager, being a mother of 2 kids, thinking about owning my own business and being successful, and this can only happen, again, people talk about, that American dream, and that was true for me. Coming from, I finished my high school, got married, and did my bachelor's in commerce, and just starting my business out of my basement. I started out of my, literally out of my laundry room, and my husband like, what is going on? Who are these people walking into my house? And what is your plan? And yes, there is an American dream, and that's what we all follow, and we come here to this country and to find a better life, and this country, no doubt, has given us that. And as absolutely, for me, it has been, I could not have imagined doing this in London or in Pakistan or in any other country in Dubai, being a woman and just believing in myself and doing it literally out of my laundry room and opening up my own business and being very successful with it. So I am really thankful that we are here, and we are very thankful for you standing up for us in Chicago and representing us, because you hold a legacy which is absolutely, we all know. Kennedy is the royal family, and we all, no matter what, it's like the fascination we have with the Kennedys, and and the dream, and that what your family has struggled and what they have given up, and how they have cut their lives short for, and they have sacrificed their lives for this country. And I think we are lucky to be a part of it. And hopefully, if all these minority people who are here, we look up to you for making Illinois the home that we are looking for, and making it great for generations to come, for my kids, because this is their home. No matter where I go in the world, we travel, and they are like, Mom, we gotta go home. I miss home, and this is their home. And you are we look up to you guys. You're going to make this home a real home for the coming generations, because we are not here, so that they have the best opportunities. Amir, that's my son. We would love to hear something from you.
I'm Amir. I'm a student at Hillsdale Central. and this might happen. So personally, your campaign has inspired me because since second grade I've been doing projects on your family.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
a huge fan, and it's really inspired me that and like motivated me to have huge people like you come to our house. And thank you for all you're doing for us.
Thank you so much. You're such a good speaker. How about that?
We are looking forward that, for them, that this becomes like, that for them, you guys they have looked up, the videos we have bought, the DVDs we have bought, and all over studying the legacy and, and the sacrifices that your family has done. And I think every immigrant who's sitting here, there is a certain sacrifice, leaving your family, leaving your norm and your home, and coming here to make a better living. It's not easy for anybody. And people who have sacrificed, including the Kennedys, and your loved ones whose lives have been cut short, it's not the easiest thing that everybody's holding on to. And we believe that you can take it to the next level. And that's why we are supporting this campaign, and we really believe that you should be the next in charge for Illinois. And
Thank you.
Yes.
I love that.
We are looking forward to that.
So I might respond a little bit if I could.
Donnie,
Yes,
come down
please.
for a second.
And think about that idea of what we all have in common, this notion of the American dream. I give it a lot of thought. I think about it a lot. Because I was born on the 4th of July. I was born on Independence Day. And I think about our national holidays, what we celebrate, and why that's different than other countries. So our two favorite holidays as a family, I think, are probably 4th of July and Thanksgiving. That's what we like. 4th of July really celebrates independence and freedom. And I think those are two core values of our country. And Thanksgiving, we really thank the people who welcome us when we arrive in the country. It's a celebration of the people who welcomed us and a reminder that we're all here to welcome the next group of people who arrive in our country. That's the parable of our nation. It's the lesson of our history. It's the story we want to tell our children. Your stories are the stories we want to share with our kids and with their children as well. Because we think that's the thing that makes our country different than any other. A place where anybody can make it, a nation of rugged individualism, fierce independence, and endless upward mobility. That's what we want.
Absolutely, that's true. And I believe in that.
But that system is under attack. That system is under attack in the United States today. The truth is, beginning in about 1980, the notion of upward mobility came to an end. Today in the United States, if you're born poor, you'll probably stay poor. If you're born rich, you'll probably remain rich. If you're born in between, you're going to have a life of constant threat and hazard. That's what's happened in the United States since 1980. That's not good for our country, and it's not good for any of us. Because people are using that frustration, that fear, that people can't make it here anymore. They're using it to twist the minds and the views, almost to brainwash people, to blame immigrants and others, to amass power for themselves. We see it in what Donald Trump has done, and we see it in some of the elected officials or people running for office in this election. People like J.B. Pritzker, who used racist language when he ran for Congress, really against Muslims at that time, and then he runs in trying to get himself appointed to a position with Governor Blagojevich, and he uses racist language about African Americans, and people are susceptible to that. There is power in it. I first came to Illinois because I wanted to join the anti-hunger movement. I wanted to feed people. I graduated high school and college. I graduated college in 1986. And President Reagan had done something no American president had ever done. He had created homelessness and hunger in the United States. Amir, he'll never know what it was like to be in an American city without homeless population. That's what it was like in the United States prior to 1979. But now in every big city in America, there's a giant homeless population, almost all of that caused by President Reagan. Sarah Nixon grew up in a house that was the first shelter in Washington, D.C. It was the first place where people could come and live. Her parents opened their home to people and then finally built the first shelter there. She's testament to the change that occurred in our country. I got caught up in all of that. You know, there was no such thing as a food bank in the United States prior to President Reagan. We did not have food banking. Every food bank was started during the Reagan administration, and I got caught up in that idea of trying to feed other people. I didn't know how to feed anybody, so I got a job in industry. I moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Decatur, Illinois to work for ADM, the big grain processor, so I could learn how food is grown and processed, distributed, and sold in the United States so I could go into the fight against hunger. Eventually I moved to Chicago, and well, I ran the merchandise mart, but I still volunteered at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, the nation's largest food bank. Sheila was on the board too. And about 6 years ago, she and I started an anti-hunger program called Top Box Foods. We bring food to food deserts, groceries all over northern Illinois. Sheila runs it today. We operate through about 120 different community organizations. And last month we did more volume in 1 month than the entire first year combined when I was running it, because Sheila runs it now. The people that we're serving, they're the people that this economy has left behind. They're mostly in Chicago. They don't have the anger and the rage that you feel in other parts of Illinois. Because here in this area, we have 100-year-old social service agencies, people who are helping the poor and people who can't make it. We still celebrate Jane Addams, because Jane Addams started the first, settlement house to welcome people into Chicago. And that notion of welcoming people is still present in this community. But if you go to southern Illinois, well, they don't have 100-year-old social service agencies, and now we have entire counties without a grocery store. We have communities that have so little tax base that they can't fund their schools, and 0% of the kids who go to the local school graduate college ready. Those people in those communities, that's where Donald Trump did so well. 70, 80, 85%, 90% of the people voted for Trump. They're raging, they're angry, they're upset at a country where their kids can't make it. If we don't restore the American dream in this country, like restore it quickly, if people can't make it here anymore, well, they're going to turn to people like Trump. People who offer solutions like, let's get rid of all the foreigners, let's attack the people who are new to this country. That's what's going on. I was on a radio show, an African-American radio show, and the fellow who's the host, he said to me, do you favor sanctuary cities? I said, yes, I favor sanctuary city. He said, well, I think the reason African-Americans, my people, he said, blacks don't have jobs is because we let the Mexicans in. I said, what did you say? He said, I think the reason the African Americans don't have jobs is we let the Mexicans in. And he has a little bat in his hand. He's playing with it. We're on Facebook Live. But it's a radio show, one of the most popular African American radio shows in the Chicago area. I said to him, wait a second, are you saying that the reason that African Americans don't have jobs in Chicago is because we let the Mexicans into our country? He said, yes. I said, if you repeat that one more time, I'm going to come over and take that bat out of your hand and use it on you. He said, what? I said, I tell you, you heard me exactly what I said. I'm going to use that bat on you. Don't say that racist thing again. Not on this radio show, which is your radio show, or ever again. It's not true. That is not why people are suffering. They're suffering because they lack education, because we underfund our schools. That's what's going on in this country. Because we cut the taxes on the wealthiest people here, and now we don't pay for our schools adequately. And people who go to schools who are not funded adequately have no chance to participate in the American dream. They're not going to become engineers. They're not going to become doctors. They're not going to become anesthesiologists. It's impossible. And if we don't restore that American dream, that anger is going to build, that rage is going to increase. and people are going to get carried away with it, and we need to stop it. Stop it in Illinois before it spreads anywhere else. And we know how to do it. We know how to fix the American dream, restore upward economic mobility, so that anybody, anywhere in the chance, anywhere in the state has a chance to live the American dream, to do what you did, to start a business, to allow it to grow, and to become a doctor or become an engineer, start their own business, become an artist if they're lucky enough to have that talent. That's what we want for everyone in our community. How do we do that? Education is power. Education is the most important gift that we could give the next generation. But in Illinois, well, in Illinois, we're not giving them the education that they deserve. 75% of the kids who graduate high school in Illinois went to schools that are so underfunded that they're so undereducated that they can't go to community college without remedial education. 75%. In Chicago alone, it's much higher. There are 30 high schools in Chicago where the average ACT score is a 14 or a 15. Those kids are so undereducated they can't make it here. They can't make it, and we're forcing them to do nothing more than commit crimes of survival. They commit crimes of survival until they get caught, and we send them to jail. We send them to prison. We teach them no skills. We release them back in the population. They don't have a driver's license or any capacity to participate in our economy, and they are released and commit crimes of survival once again till they're sent back to jail. That's the culture that we've developed. It needs to end. We need to give every kid a chance. We need to restore that American dream. And education is critical. The reason we have bad outcomes with our education is the way we fund it. In Illinois, as many of you know, we fund our schools with local property taxes. If you live in a nice community like this, your school is going to have
zip code, and that again, that matters a lot, and I'm sure my husband will agree that we had enough fights, and he would be like, why do you need, and I said, I don't care, it's hard to clean this big, huge house, and I'm like least interested in it. The only reason for me to hold on to was to keep them in a district where they would not get into trouble, not get into drugs, not get into any kind of, and have the fair chance to have that American dream. Other than that, I have least interest in holding a house.
Well, how about for fundraisers for the candidates? You cannot think of your own family.
So I told him, and people would come like, you have a beautiful house, and I'm like, yes, I'm looking like Cinderella right now while you have to watch me taking the garbage and cleaning and plunging and all that, what I have to do to keep this house together. And the reason to keep the house was exactly, and that's what I told my kids, that you have to be thankful every night that you go to a school district, that you are secured, and you go to a school district where it's well funded, that the teachers or the school has so much of funds because of, we had McDonald Corporate Center, we had Oak Brook Mall. So yes, the school is very well funded, but if we would move to Burridge, we lived there for a year, and I was in tears. I said, I cannot live there because the South, they had an unincorporated area, and they had a lot of trouble. And a lot of kids of our own community, a lot of doctors' kids ended up being drug addicts. And a lot of people with really good businesses, their kids ended up being drug addicts, and they are I still know at this present they are in rehabs because they hung out with the wrong crowd. And they got motivated and they started doing drugs. So for me, I wanted to sell the house, and I came here. So yes, that is a big problem, that your zip code matters.
That's the biggest problem, and your zip code should not matter when you live in the United States.
Yes.
Everybody should have an equal chance. That's why all of our families came here, for that equal chance, and we need to restore that.
And I never knew that.
And here we pay for the schools with property taxes. In places like Massachusetts or Minnesota, Maryland, they pay for the school at the state level. But here we cling to a system, an outdated system. We should have moved to a system where we pay for the schools at the state level. The Democrats had a supermajority in the state House, supermajority in the state Senate, controlled the governor's mansion, and never did anything to fix the system. Why? Because a handful of elected officials have outside jobs, a second job as a property tax appeals lawyer. They're making money on this system. a system that's damning that next generation to a life of economic servitude. It's forcing our families to break apart as people are pushed out of our state. It's wrecking our economy, and it's destroying our future. We need to put an end to that system. We need to get the dirty money out of politics and get the dirty politicians out of government. If we do that, we can restore the American dream in a single generation by fixing the way we fund schools. And if we fix the way we fund schools, your zip code won't matter. Everyone will have an equal chance, and that rage, that anger that's present in our communities will decrease, and once again we'll welcome everyone to our state and to our country. I think about the American dream and the Kennedy family. We came here, the Irish Catholics came here in the 1840s and the 1850s after the Irish potato famine. The potato famine in Ireland only affected potatoes. Only 15% of the land in Ireland at the time was used to farm potatoes. Everything else was used for high-level crops that were exported to the wealthy people who lived in England. The people in Ireland starved to death, millions of them, when there was plenty of food in that country to feed everyone. But they couldn't unravel the social, the political, and the economic barriers to allow people to be fed in that country. Today in Illinois, 15% of the people in our state are hunger insecure. They have a hard time making it work for them. In Ireland, in the 1850s, only 15% of the land was used for the potatoes. You think it couldn't get much worse than that. But here in Illinois, one of the biggest farm states in the world, only 7% of the land, the farmland, is used to grow crops that directly feed people. The rest is used for feed crops and others to create meats and high-level proteins that are appropriate for the super rich and the wealthiest among us. So we're part of that system. We can say back in history, be critical of what they did in the 1800s in another continent, but to some degree we're living that here now. When our people arrived, we were treated as dirty, as unteachable, as ignorant, as a threat to society, and as a threat to American security. So don't think you're special. It's just your turn. But it was our turn, and it was terrible. It lasted 50, 60 years. The stories you hear tonight of first and second generation immigrants becoming engineers and doctors, running small companies and large corporations alike, that was not the Irish in America. That is not our story. Not at all, not even close. Yours is the story that we wanted our people to have, but it took generation after generation after generation of hard fights. They would not give the Irish Catholics jobs, not in business, not in restaurants, not in hotels with those signs above the back doors, the entranceways, N-I-N-A, no Irish need apply because we will never let you have a job anyways. My grandmother, Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, the mother of the President of the United States, marched us around when we were young children, took us out at night, walked us by the hand and said, you are growing up as one of the most privileged families in the world. Do not forget where you came from. But too many Irish Catholics forgot where they came from. Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, her father was the first American-born Irish Catholic mayor of Boston, Massachusetts. Before he was a mayor, he was a congressman. He goes to Washington because the immigration laws at the time won't let people who can't speak English become citizens. And he figures out that's mostly the Italians. The Italians can't speak English, but there's a ton of them in Boston and New York and Chicago. And if he can get the law changed so that people can become citizens, even if they can't speak English, that the Italians will become citizens and will vote for him. So he goes to Washington, changes the law, comes back to Boston, and becomes the mayor of the city. And when he's mayor of the city, he realizes that his friends and family, they work in terrible conditions, dangerous, long hours at low pay. So they change the laws, create unions, and cobbles together this coalition of immigrant families of Irish, Italians, Poles in some places, and labor, people who were being oppressed by an economic system meant to crush them or a political system meant to exclude them. And they recreate the Democratic Party. They take the name and they say it's not what it's going to be, it's not what it was. We're going to create something new out of it. And they build the modern Democratic Party. And it takes 60 years from the time he becomes mayor of the city of Boston to when his grandson becomes president of the United States in 1960. It's an incredible triumph, part of the story that we're all part of. President Kennedy, his father was ambassador to England, and my grandfather, Joe Kennedy, he remembered clearly what the British had done, and then he becomes ambassador to England. And he sends his sons, mostly, around Europe to see where the rage and anger is coming from at the beginning of World War II. And they become anti-colonialists. They realize the oppression that's been created around the world. And Jack, in particular, becomes the most anti-colonialist member of the United States House of Representatives and then the United States Senate. And when he becomes President of the United States, he realizes that there are whole parts of the world that are not sending their best and brightest to America, particularly places like Pakistan and India, places like Palestine. And he starts to change the law to allow everybody from around the world to come to the United States. He does not live to see the day when that law is passed. But his brother, my father, his brother, my Uncle Teddy, in 1965, co-sponsored legislation to bring to the United States, open up our immigration laws so that people from all over the world, for the first time in American history, can come to the United States. And that is one of his great things. And it changes everything. It changes the future of this country. I think about the great buildings that we're fortunate enough to live around in Chicago, places like the Hancock Building and the Sears Tower, designed by engineers not from the United States, but who came here from elsewhere. I think of the buildings that we're building on Wolf Point, being designed by the great Caesar Pelli, an immigrant to the United States. I think about Kellogg, the business school I went to, run by an immigrant to the United States. I think about our schools that our kids have been educated by, the great businesses in Illinois, all run by immigrants, and how lucky we are that in 1965, the Kennedys and others had the vision to open up immigration in the United States. We cannot let that be turned back. We need to fight it. We cannot fight it simply by objecting to it, simply by writing letters to congressmen and senators. We need to fight it by restoring opportunity in the United States. Opportunity is the enemy of violence, and opportunity is the enemy of hate. If we do not restore opportunity, that hate and that violence will build. But if we restore opportunity once again in the United States, people will welcome everyone from around the world once again to our country with open arms. And that is what we want for ourselves, for our children, and the future of this country. If we do those things, if we fix education, we can give our kids good jobs, we can give them long careers, we can keep our families together, we can keep the promise of this country, and we can, at least in Illinois once again, make the American dream the dream for all Americans. And that's why I'd like your help while we run for governor of Illinois. Thank you all.
Tanya would say a few
Who
words.
is this man?
How are you, Chief? The next governor, please give it up for the next governor. He's going for Illinois.
It's great to be back in the warm and lovely home of Dr. Javed and Mrs. Bushra Isan and their sons Amir and Tanya. On behalf of the Multi-Ethnic Advisory Task Force, we want to thank you, Dr. Javed and Mrs. Bushra, for all that you do. As president of the Merchandise Mart, Mr. Kennedy created many, many jobs in Illinois and brought new businesses to Illinois. As chairman of the University of Illinois Board of Trustees, he increased financial aid and endowment. cornerstone of the Kennedy legacy is the importance of family. Tonight we have Mr. Kennedy's family here with us. We have his wife, Mrs. Sheila Kennedy, who founded... Mrs. Sheila founded Top Box Foods, which provides healthy boxes of foods at affordable prices. His children, Chris Jr. and Kate, are also with us here. And Mr. Max Kennedy and Mrs. Vicky Kennedy, his brother.
So Vicky,
And Mr. Bob and Mrs. Sarah Kennedy from DC. Mr. Patrick Kennedy from Illinois.
Yeah.
A few days ago, Mr. Kennedy's nephew, Congressman Joe Kennedy, flew into Illinois to help out on the campaign trail, and there was a rally at UIC for him. And this has propelled the Meatf family also into action. Most of the problems Illinois is facing are unemployment, underfunding for education, and lack of economic development. This stems from the fact that Illinois has never had a balanced budget in the last 30 years. And 4 of the last 9 governors of Illinois have been placed behind bars. Mr. Kennedy's platform is to have a corrupt-free Illinois. He's focusing on using technology to further the Illinois' economy agenda, which will bend, break, and blink. His motto for Illinois is to reform, perform, and transform. Illinois currently ranks 48th out of the 50 states with regards to the tax dollars sent to the federal government versus the federal government gives to Illinois. Mr. Kennedy plans to make a state grants office to make sure Illinois gets sufficient funds from the federal government. The state grants office would identify and distribute private and federal funding in Illinois. Mr. Kennedy will also create a regional planning commission to ensure that every part of Illinois is given support for the economy. As chairman of the University of Board of Illinois Trustees, Mr. Kennedy created the agricultural planning coalition called Farm Illinois. He will make a roadmap for Illinois' economy modeled after this Farm Illinois that will be specific to each region. He would also hold Blue Ribbon Economic Development Summits. These summits would bring together experts across the state to determine how to increase the metropolitan development in southern and western Illinois. Mr. Kennedy will also start a council of economic advisors to analyze the tax policy. The council will research how to revamp the corporate tax code. He will reinvest in career training to revitalize employment. He will ensure that there are fundamental career courses and apprenticeships available to everyone in Illinois. Mr. Kennedy strongly believes in having affordable health care for everyone. He will create a Medicaid buy-in program which allows people to pay a lesser premium if they're low income but don't qualify for Medicaid. He would make sure prescription drugs are affordable by requiring drug companies to justify when they raise the price of a prescription drug. He will also implement a hub-and-spoke model to treat a person's addiction. This is where patients come to a hub to receive anti-withdrawal medication and then are moved to specific addiction programs. As Mr. Kennedy's father was a victim of gun violence, Mr. Kennedy is deeply driven to combat gun violence. He would work to ensure that the proposed gun violence dealer licensing bill is passed in the House. He would also provide mental health treatment for gun violence victims, and he will work to control gun access. Mr. Kennedy strongly believes in the importance of education. He will start the Illinois Promise program, which will cover 2 years of community college tuition for low and middle income students. He will also work to fight against school closures in Illinois. Chicago is the only district in Illinois that has an appointed school board, as opposed to an elected school board. Mr. Kennedy will support an elected school board for Chicago Public Schools. This elected school board will allow the residents' needs to be met more efficiently. He will increase professional development programs for teachers through the Illinois State Board of Education. He will ensure that funding is tailored to the regional needs, and he will create a teacher review committee to evaluate the professional development programs. The programs will keep teachers up to date with instructional methods. He will also make children with disabilities a top priority, and he'll make sure there is a workforce training for people with disabilities as well. Overcrowding in schools is a rising problem across Illinois. Mr. Kennedy will use a progressive income tax system so that every school will have enough resources for its students. Yes, Mr. Kennedy will reform, perform, and transform. He will engage, embrace, and empower communities. He is known for his honesty, integrity, and efficiency. I present to you the dynamic leader, Mr. Chris Kennedy.
Somebody went through all of our policy platforms. That wasn't taking forever. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That was great.
Now, Governor Kennedy, we have with us a very special guest in our midst, somebody who's been a philanthropist, who's dedicated his life, a famous orthopedic surgeon, and now he has started a foundation, and he is a silent giver, hates the limelight. But when we told him Chris Kennedy is coming, he said, this has been my lifelong dream, and so I'll be here. This person rarely goes out, and he has his own foundation with him and his daughter, and he gives millions of dollars out to different charities in India and in US, and to all ethnic races. And he is also, his wife is bedridden. He makes sure that she's just like your family is the legacy, and he believes very important. He stays by her bedside and nurses her, and he rarely makes an outing. Very happy to have with us Dr. Ashok Ray. Please give it up to Dr. Ashok.
Thank you, Dr. Ehsan. Thank you, Dr. Prabhakar. Thank you, everybody, for giving me an opportunity to talk. Please sit down. Do you mind if I call you Chris? Please. Okay, Chris. You know, I'm not a speaker. As I say, my wife.
We've just heard the speaker.
My wife is in death bed. First, I'm going to give you a good news that will cheer you up. Do you know where you rank in the poll today as of now?
It changes every few hours.
There are two polls came out 1 hour ago. Guess what? You're number 2.
Right. All right.
You'll be knocking in 2 to 3 years' time in the White House. I tell you, don't laugh. I said the same thing to Barack Obama.
Did you?
Again, about 12 years ago, in a meeting, in a home meeting, you know, and whatever I'm talking, just whatever coming to my mind. And I was sitting by his side. I gave it the organization called Apna Ghar and Hamdard. I was there. He was a senator, and I'm older than him. I'm 81 years old. I'm in Chicago for 51 years, for 50 years. And mostly, I was invited to come from your original home, Ireland. I was educated in Ireland.
I thought you looked Irish.
You recognize my name in red.
All right.
Anyway, so I spent a year in Dublin. and then 4 years in England, Scotland, so that's my background. I was invited to come to Northwestern, at Northwestern University. Anyway, so all my life is downtown and Cook County. And lately I'm not very proud of what I've seen. Anyway, that's not the thing. I will just now, I got a call at 10:30, and I'm so grateful because I had a dream like Martin. I wanted to see another Kennedy to be inaugurated.
He said, I'm 81 years old, Dr. Hassan. I'm not sure I'm going to live long. Once, before I die, my only dream is to see a Kennedy in the White House.
Wow! And we have the publisher and the founder of the Hayat magazine. You would like to bring some greetings, Dr. Barak?
Yeah. And Dr. Ray's dream that they have to be up there and they have to be, they have to be the Kennedys. Yes, that's a long dream. My mother, she still remembers when John F. Kennedy was shot, and she still talks about the salute that that the son gave, and she that John Jr. gave. Yes, and my mom still talks about it.
That's icon.
Yes, that is for us. For this family means a lot, and we look up to it. And I think my husband, my kids, me, my mother, my grandmother, they've all been fascinated. It's like the royal family of America. And if they are, and what they have done, and how much they have sacrificed for this country, nobody can beat that. And for them, the dream that they have for America, we look forward that they are in.
We're all here in this room because of John F. Kennedy, presidents for the immigration reform he made, the family reunification bill. So we'd like.
And he also took care of the flag. He did great.
Yes.
You should see what happened in Alabama. He was the martyr. But we have to make sure. That's right.
Dr. Ray is matching it, I can bet.
No, I crossed that stage. It's not magic. You and me have to sit together right now, next week. And then I will tell you what I like to see, and then, Indian, Pakistan, I will.
Yeah, Hayat, the publisher, the founder of Hayat magazine, like say.
As you well know, I'm Dr. Barakat. I have nothing to do with publishing. I have nothing to do with entertainment or anything, but I had a dream that we need some media in our community as Middle Eastern. This is the only magazine so far exist and sustained in the United States for over 5 years. All Middle Eastern magazines stay in the market for a year or two and they shut down. So we are expanding, actually going to Michigan and California. Hopefully we'll reach all the United States. So we are supporting Mr. Kennedy. Obviously, I live in Will County, not in Cook County, and I will do some campaigns for him in Will County as well, because not too many Middle Eastern live in Will County. So I will go there and try to make some campaigns for him.
Very great. Thank you so much, Chief, for coming. We have also the First Lady of the state of Illinois, Mrs. Sheila Kennedy. Please give it up to her. She's another one who makes a rare appearance. She's the crown jewel. She's the crown jewel of the Kennedy household. Tonight is a very rare, and we are honored to have her with us. And she, on Sundays, whatever happens with Chris around doing campaigning, she packs the top box lunches for the homeless and the food and the hungry. Please give it back to Ms. Sheila Kennedy. We are really honored by her presence. She doesn't accompany our Governor Chris Kennedy to many stops, so we're really honored. And for that, a special tribute we have by none other than Gerard Moore, who will now address us. Mr. Give it up for Gerard Moore.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out to Dr. Jawed Ihsan and Bushra Ihsan's home for this event for Chris Kennedy. But more importantly, I don't think this event is for Chris Kennedy. I actually think it's for each individual in this room. I think Chris Kennedy served as the engine that will push our agenda forward. As I look around this room, I see a lot of people who came to me personally with different issues, whether it was with the state of Illinois or other places, and we was unable to get it done. But this is the time to put somebody in office that actually hears us. Don't be shy, because, and the reason why I say that is, after March 20th, it'll be too late. I don't want you to go back and say, I wish I could have, or I wish I would have. Tonight is the night to make that impact, and tonight is the night that we can all make that difference that need to be made in the state of Illinois. We all have children that we want to have a better future for, and this man, I believe in my heart, is the engine that we need to push our children to another level as it relates to their future. I ain't been this excited about an individual in a long time, since President Barack Obama, and I wasn't that excited about it.